machines actually learn from data. And that's why for you as a machine learning engineer, you really need to understand how to analyze your data, clean it, and kind of like make your data make sense. Because in real life, most data actually, not every data, but most data is not going to come clean. And it is your job as a machine learning engineer to put them together. And this is actually where Pandas comes in. Okay? So when we talk about Pandas, I just want you to think of it as, you know, think of Pandas like Excel inside Python, right? But much more powerful than Excel. Now, it helps us to load data, inspect it, clean it, transform it, and analyze it without doing everything manually, right? And one of the most important thing in Pandas actually is something called a data frame. Let's talk about that. But before we talk about that, let's kind of like install Pandas. In my previous videos, I've talked about visual environment. So if you haven't watched that, please go ahead and watch that. I'm going to put a link up there and in the description, box. So if you haven't watched that, just go ahead and watch it and then come back to this video. So for right now, I'm just going to go pip install and I'll call Pandas. And when I go enter, you can see requirements satisfied here. This is because I have already installed it. All right. So we don't need that. For you, it's just going to load up and set it all up. Now, once you have that, you are good to go. Let's get back to what DataFrame is. Now, when we talk about DataFrame is basically just a table, right? It has rows and columns, just like an Excel sheet or just a database table, whichever one. Now, for example, imagine you have student data like names, age, scores, and class. That entire table is a data frame. So when people say things like, you hear machine learning engineer or data analyst saying, hey, we worked with data frame, they are simply talking about work with structured table in Python. You can load a data frame from a CSV file, an Excel file, a database, or even, of course, create one manually yourself, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So for you to create one manually, the very first thing you have to do is create your file in VS Code, of course, and open it. And just first thing is to import Pandas. So I'm just going to import Pandas as I get that right, Pandas, right? Good. As PD, all right? Just import it as PD. Now the next thing you're going to do is just write a simple code like this. Now here we have the data. And we have, name. This is more like a dictionary in Python, of course. So it's not something new. It's not something major here. So this is a dictionary. These are the keys and these are the values, okay? So here we have the names. We have 3 students' names. Here we have their ages, 3 ages. We have the scores, 3 scores, right? So here we use data frame, which is we're getting that from Pandas, and we're kind of like converting the data into a Pandas file object. All right, so before I continue this, I'm going to kind of like give you more of the theory, right? The theoretical part of everything. So if I'm saying things, just get familiar with the terms and stuff. And don't worry, towards the end of this class, I'm going to clean a very kind of like a simple messy data so you can see all of what I've taught you in theory in practice. Okay? All right, cool. All right, so if we go ahead and print this right now, we are going to get something like this. All right, so this is our data frame. Converted everything up to a table. Does this not look like a table? We have the names, which is a column name, and we have the three people on this dictionary here, and we have the ages and we have their scores. Does that make sense? All right, let's move forward. So now the reason Pandas is kind of like very, very useful is because data is almost never perfect. So if you start working as a machine learning as an intern in a company, you're going to be given data that's kind of like not perfect, and you have to clean it up yourself. So in real world, data could look, could have missing values, duplicate records, extra spaces, stuff like wrong column types, inconsistent text, like you have capital letter male, small letter male, and camel cases and all that. And if you don't clean that data first, your result can be very wrong. Your model could learn the wrong thing and would not even perform very good, right? So this is where data cleaning comes in. Now let's talk about data cleaning. Now, what is data cleaning? Data cleaning means fixing the problem in your data because before analyzing it. So the very first thing you got to do is to clean the problem in your data before trying to analyze it. And there are three major things that we do whenever we want to do data cleaning. Let me come here and comment this: data cleaning. The very first one we do is we use the function called .head, and the next one is we use another function called .info. All of this is coming from Pandas DataFrame. Don't forget that. We use another one called .is null. Okay. All right. So what does .head means here? .head shows the first few rows of your data, right? It kind of show you the first few rows. It could be 5. For this one, we only have we only have 3 rows. But when you're working with a real life data, you probably have like thousands of rows. In this case, .head is just going to show you a few lines of this particular your data frame, so you know exactly how your data looks like. Now the next one, .info, is going to show you columns, types, and missing values. So if you have missing values, the column type, if you need to convert the column types, this particular .info is going to give you information about your data so that you can know exactly what to do and what not to do. Now .is null, .sum, sometimes, most of the time, we add we add .sum here. This particular one shows how many missing values each column has. Does that make sense? So all of these things actually helps us to understand what is wrong with our data. There's nothing much, right? It just helps us to understand what is wrong with our data, what we really need to fix. Now that brings us down to the next part of it, called data and handling the missing values. So after knowing what is wrong with your data, now the next thing you want to do is to handle those particular problem, right? You want to solve the problem. You just don't want to leave it like that. Otherwise, your model is going to be, it's not going to perform really good. So now, like I told you guys, it's going to be more theory first, and then eventually towards the end, I'm going to take your real life data and kind of apply all those things to it so you can see what exactly is going on. Okay. All right. So missing value here. What does this mean? Sometimes some cells are empty. For example, you might have a missing age, you might have a missing price, you might have, something like even as much as missing names, to be honest. So data are not really perfect. By the time you start working with real life data, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. But you can either remove those rows or fill them up. And one of the things that you can do here, one of the things that we use here is we use dots drop NA, okay, to kind of like remove rows with missing values. Another one we use is we can actually just replace the missing values with an average mean. For example, let's say we have like our data frame, we want to change that age. Let's say age is not available between 2, it's kind of like missing. We can actually just come here and put in this. I'm passing our column. Right, once we pass in our column, we tell the data frame of that particular column, which is another age, and we do something like fill NA, which is fill the empty space. We want to fill that up with pass in the age again, just to make sure we are in track, and we want to actually fill that space with a mean, the average. So what will this code here do? This will replace missing age values with the average age from the other ones, right? It will calculate the average age of the other ones and kind of fill in the space. You need that. You don't want the space to be empty. You don't want your model to kind of like want to learn and then it doesn't see a particular thing for a particular role. It's just gonna mess up with the flow of how your model will learn. Right, so filling that up will kind of like make your model kind of like, okay, I got something here to learn from. All right, so this is particularly useful when you don't want to lose too much data. I want you to put that at the back of your mind. All right, so another thing we got to do here after learning how to replace is to remove duplicate value. All right, so I'm going to come down here and say removing duplicate values. All right, so removing duplicate values is not hard. In Python here, we can just we use drop, drop duplicates to kind of like automatically just remove all the duplicates on the particular row. Don't worry, we're almost getting there to the practical part of it. This is just a theory. I just want you to see how things going, because some of you probably wondering, oh, this is just too much, not going. Don't worry, just stay with me to the end, okay? All right, so once we have that, the next thing we want to do is what we can fix here is the formatting, okay? Fixing text formatting. This is where text formatting. This is where stuff like you have inconsistency of the tests. For example, you have you have city spelled with capital letter and the next one is spelled with Lagos, and then for example you can have John spelled here with John, and then Mary will be spelled with capital letter like this, and then David can be spelled like this. So we need to fix this. This doesn't really this is not going to make sense for your model to kind of understand this real good. All right, so that is where your text formatting comes in. All right, and how do we really fix this? We can do that by calling that particular column and kind of like use dots and use dots xtr and dot strip. We can use the strip. Right, I'm going to explain that in a bit, what the strip does, and we kind of like push it back to string again, and then we use lower. It will be preferable to kind of lower everything so we have consistency. Now, what does dot strip actually does? It kind of removes extra spaces on your test. So you might have this like this. It's going to remove that state and just kind of like close it up. If you have this like this, it's going to remove that space and close it up. All right, so another thing is that lower. That lower here, as you already know in Python, actually converts everything to lowercase. So now every values become consistent. Okay. All right. The one thing else you need to learn as a basic starting of your Pandas journey is you need to learn how to fix data type. It's very, very important. Very important. Now let's say your age. Sometimes numbers are stored as text, which can actually cause problem. Okay, we don't want that. Now what I'm going to teach you, or this particular function you're going to learn right here, it's going to help you convert the column to numbers actually. So for us to get to do that, we can use dot numerics. Okay, and then we can pass in like the particular data frame. In this case, it could be your age, it could be anything. Again, like I said, don't worry, we're getting close to the particular practical of this particular course. All right, so you can pass this, and what this will actually do, if something cannot be converted, Pandas will turn that into missing value. So that means if this cannot be converted into, let's say for instance, I have Pat here. If this cannot be converted into kind of like numbers, for example, integer data type, the Pandas will just turn that into and kind of like a missing value, something like this on your data type. Okay. All right. When we get to the practical, we shall cross over. All right, one other thing which is more like, the last but not the least, is for you to learn aggregation. You're going to see this a lot, especially for those people studying, data analysis. Aggregation is when, after cleaning your data, the next step is to often summarize what you got from the whole data, right? This is where aggregation actually comes in, right? Aggregation means taking many rows of data and reducing them into useful summary information or values. Right? So for example, we might have stuff like, the average score. We might have something like, total sales, maximum salary, number of students in each class. Those are the things that you can get. And all of that right there is called aggregation, right? All right. Some of the example of this could be like, your dot sum. sum, and you can also have the mean. All of these things are your aggregation dot counts to get counts. You can also use dot max to get the maximum number of a particular column row. You can also use dot mean actually to get a minimum. All right, so these are aggregation functions that we can use. If you say mean, this actually tells you the average, highest and lowest score, stuff like that. So put this in mind, okay? All right, so the very final one we got to get here is grouping. Grouping with aggregation. All right, so this one is very important, right? This is actually where Pandas becomes really, really very interesting for me, actually, when I'm working with data. It's kind of like crazy how it just takes and thousands of rows and columns. It just takes those information and just kind of like compute them and give you and make the data make sense. You're gonna see what I'm saying in a bit. Okay. All right. So let's say you want to know the average score per class, right? So what you need to do if you want to know the average score per class, here this is score and average score per class. You can just come down here with grouping. You can just say grouped. Let's name it group right for now, and just calling your df, and which is your data frame, and called group by. Okay, it's very important for you to remember that. And now you can pass class. You can call the class. And the next thing is we're looking at the score. Okay, we want to look at the score. In this case, the score here, and each of this, we want to look at the average of the score, and then we call in the mean, and we're gonna do that, and we save that. This is the only one I'm gonna run right now, so you can see how powerful it is. I'm gonna clear that up, and if I run this, we can see we have error right here. Class. There's no class here. Okay, this in this case, I'm gonna group by the name. All right, I want to group it by the name column, so we don't have class. So by name, we have John. Oh, sorry, I didn't print that. So it prints. I'm gonna go ahead and click on grouped, and now save that. If I save that and I run this, you're gonna see David 78, the minimum David score is 78. John is 85, and the mean for Mary is 90. Does that make sense? So that's pretty much how powerful it could be. Okay, you got to group by what? What are you grouping it by? Is it by the class or by the stuff? It got to be something, and then the next thing is that particular column that you want to get the whole mean, which is this, which is your score column. All right, so with that being said, don't worry, we're going to see it in action when we get into the practical. Now with all that information up there, you can see that we have we can even go further to get the max, minimum, and all of that. Okay, now it's time for us to get into the practical section, right? So the practical section is, I'm just going to call this practical. Like we said, I'm going to print this down here. Like we said from the very beginning, Python, actually, Pandas can load files from CSV file. So I have a CSV file. This is a messy data, because if we look here, we can see that, let me push it down to this so that you can see exactly how it looks. You can see that here we have, we have duplicates, laptop, we have headphones, and we have two headphone duplicate values problem here. We can also see that we have inconsistency of the alphabets, which is the capital letters, small letters. We can also see we have missing values under sales, and you can see not available here. And we can kind of like see this data is kind of like messy. So let's fix it up, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna put this down, and I can share these files for you if you want in the comment section. I'm gonna put it in the comment section or in the description box, okay, so you can have access to it. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and close that. Here, the very first thing, we already have Pandas imported at the top. We have Pandas here. Make sure you have it. And then we're gonna go, the very first thing first is to call our data frame. Our data frame now is going to be pd read from, read CSV, okay? And from here we're gonna pass our sales, which is the file, okay? Your CSV file, .csv. Mind you, you can load from you can load from database, you can load from Excel, wherever. But for right now, we have it in CSV, so that's fine for this example. So the very first thing we gotta do here is we want to kind of like we've loaded the file. We can check the information if we want, which is more like printing the data frame dot head, just like we said earlier, just to print a couple line of it. Just to print a couple line of it so we can know exactly what our data look like. Okay, so I'm just gonna go terminal and I'll close this up and I'll go ahead and just print that. And you can see, okay, let me go ahead and just comment all of this ones. We don't need them right now. I'm gonna go ahead and comment this one out. All right, cool. So let's just have our practical. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna save that again and I close it. Remember what we say the head is giving us? The head is just giving us some level of information about what we have in our data, right? So this is absolutely looking good right now. It's kind of like, just 5 numbers rows from our data frame, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and clean this data. The very first thing first, we want to fix the inconsistency of the alphabet. So you can see this electronics and all of these capital letter, we want to go ahead and fix them by making them, all of them lowercase. So we talked about that up here, fixing, the numerics value, fixing the text formatting, right? That's what we want to do here, which is this. I want to copy this right now and I'll bring it down here. So how do we actually fix this? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one first, get back to the terminal. And how do we actually fix this? We want to call in the particular, data frame that we want to fix. That's having those inconsistency. In this case, it is, in this case, where is it at? In this case, it is category. You can see that category is having all that problem. So we want to go to category. I will set that there, and we also call in the data frame again, category. And this is where we call the rest of it. The string, the strip. Remember what the strip does? The strip actually remove if there's any space towards the end and the middle anywhere, it kind of like close it up and put it all together. And we kind of call like the lowercase to change everything to lowercase. So if I go ahead right now and print the data frame, and we're going to see something different in our data. So I'm gonna go back to the terminal and clear this and try to print it again. All right, now that we printed it, you can see now we have a consistency. The consistency here in terms of, the spelling and all that. It's kind of like good. Electronics, all complete, good, right? All right, the next thing we want to fix here is to actually convert whatever that's not numerics in the sales. We want to convert everything to numerics. So if we look at our data right here, we can see that under sales we have not available, which is not making sense. It's not numerics. We want to convert that right now. That's what we're going to fix. So first of all, again, you got to call in the column. In this case, it's going to be sales. And we're going to send that, we're calling the pandas to what? To numerics. I told you right on the very the theory. And here we're going to pass the data frame of that particular sales, and once we pass that, we are going to set these errors to this is what it's going to tell it, hey, just make it none. All right, so with that, we are going to see the difference. Now let me go to the terminal. Remember to save your work, and I'm going to clear that, run it again. Let's see. All right, so you can see right here on the cell, we have none, we have none. So it's converting those strings to kind of like, none, just like we said. All right, the next thing we got to do here is to fix duplicate values. You can see laptop up here. You can also see laptop up here, down here. I think we have 2 headphones. You can see headphones, you can see headphones. So we want to just get rid of those columns. We don't need duplicates. All right, so then how do we fix that? It's very simple. Just call your data frame and we will set that data frame.drop duplicates. All right, so if we go ahead and just run this, we can see it's still the same. We kind of like have headphones, yeah, pretty much it's still here. The reason for that is because it might seem like they're identical, but they're not. Pandas only can remove this if they are really everything about them is identical. Let's see. So this is 08, right? For the date, and headphone here is 19. Headphone here is West, and headphone here is West. Headphone here is 150, and this, so they're not identical, right? They're not the same. They're not the same. So it's just gonna leave them that way. Okay. All right. So we skip on that one. If there's any duplicate, we can leave it there. If there's any duplicate, if we're dealing with 1,000, we don't want to know. We just want to put that there just in case there's any duplicate. It's just going to remove them. So the final thing here we have to learn is to fill up those space that are, NA in our stuff with something. We don't need this because the machine learning model is not going to understand what that is. Okay, so we need to fill them up with something, and the best thing we can fill them up sometime is to actually fill them up with a mean of the sales. And how do we do that? We can come here and put in DataFrame and call in sales, and we'll set that equal to here we're going to call in the DataFrame again, and we pass in sales. And the next thing we are going to do here is to call that field NA. Okay, that's going to look for that NA in the field, and then here we're going to pass in our data frame again. Here I'm gonna go sales, and this time around I just want to go that mean, and it's just going to take in the mean and fill it up in those empty spaces so our data can make sense. All right, if I clear this right now, saving my file and run this, we are going to see that we don't have NA anymore in our file. Our file kind of like making sense now, right? So we completed this, filling the cases. And if there's duplicate, we remove them. We kind of like fill in this, the NA space, the ones that are strings on the cell, because we need them to be, we need them to be integer. We kind of like converted them into NA. From NA, we kind of like give those empty lines kind of like mean value, okay, instead of leaving them empty. And yes, now we are going to talk about aggregation. And aggregation is just like I said earlier, getting some kind of useful information about your clean data. Now that you clean everything, you want to get some kind of something that makes sense that you can present or kind of look into for if you have to go back and make some adjustments and stuff. So in this case, I'm just going to say results. I want to save our aggregation into that, and here I'm going to call our data frame dot group by. Okay, I'm going to call that group by. It's going to group it by a category. In this case, our category is more like electronics and what? Accessories, electronics and accessories. So we're going to group it by that. And the next thing what do we want to look into? We want to look into what? We want to look into sales. All right, so looking into sales, we're going to call that ag, which is aggregation here. And we're going to, inside our function, we're going to pass the things we want to look out for. We want to look out for sum. We also want to look out for mean for the under the category electronics and accessories. We want to look out for all the mean, and we want to look out for the counts as well, how many there are. We're going to put that inside brackets, and now we got it. Okay, cool. So we are going to print the results. After printing that, I'm going to go ahead and just make it a little fancy. Give net space, and then give line, like a dash line, and then go to the net space, and then down here I'm going to print the results so that we can see it. All right, once I save that, I'm going to come here and clear this one up and then run it again. There's a problem. I said the list object cannot be interpreted as an integer. Alright, my bad. This is supposed to be just inside one particular column. Inside one particular list, not all this. My bad. Okay, so I think everything looks good now. Alright, I saved that. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this. And I'm gonna run it again. Good. So here with the category, we have accessories and we have electronics. So the sum of these accessories is 1.0 1581.6. It could be 1581, 1582. If we sum it up, we have this one 73.11, and then looking at the mean, we have 263 for accessories and 731 for electronics. And how many accessories do we have? We have 6 accessories and we have 10 electronics. Okay, this is more like giving us good information about the data. Like I said, that is exactly what aggregation is doing. All right, just kind of like a recap. We talked about pandas. Pandas helps us to kind of like work with data in Python. A data frame is just more like, think of it like a table. Cleaning means fixing messy data, right? If you talk about cleaning, cleaning data frame, it means fixing messy data. And we also talk about aggregation. Aggregation means summarizing the table to get some kind of like insights, get some kind of meaning out of the whole thing. So if you understand these things that I just taught you very well, you already have a strong foundation in data analysis with Python, and that's going to help you kind of like understand and work with machine learning very, very good. Okay, so that's going to be it for right now. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. If you really want to support me, please subscribe to my channel and just let me know what you'd like to come next, what you'd like me to talk about next. And if you have any question or anything, put it in the comment section. This is going to be bye for now. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one.